So we're coming up close to an hour here. So I always like to end things by just asking if you had maybe two or three pieces of advice that you would give to like a new writer or someone who's just jumping into it, or maybe they're almost going to publish like you're about to. What would that be? What would you tell them as they're getting started?
So when you think it's ready, it's probably not ready yet.
Mm-hmm.
Just let it breathe for like 3 months and either read stuff that like you really think is top notch and then come back to it, or do as much research as you possibly can on the actual like craft of writing and then come back to it. You'll find something to work on and do it like 4 times and then it'll be ready. That was kind of like my experience with like querying way too early, and then and then the second one is just be persistent. Like I started doing this, seriously 8 years ago, and first book is finally coming out, and I feel like it's like I'm really proud of where it's at. And had I self-published that first book that I kind of already had like ready to go, I would not have felt good about. So like it was pretty hard to put like essentially a finished book like in a drawer and just like let it go. But I'm glad I did. So like patience and persistence are like your best allies as a writer.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. It's
And
it's worth letting things marinate. Like, don't just because Brandon Sanderson writes a bajillion books a year doesn't mean you have to, because it's worth getting it right.
Yeah, 1000%. Every time that I have like taken a little more time to think over some part of the character or the plot or the world building, I've never regretted it. Like the final edit layer I did for Bane, because it's set in like late 1500s Japan, and I basically had the story done, and I wanted to do one final check for names in like the Japanese language, because I use a lot of Japanese terminology, names, geography, places. So I already intended on doing this. And while I was doing my like language research, and I hired a translator to help with this, that was when Shogun came out. So I watched Shogun, and I noticed like just some aspects of like how they use honorifics and just like little subtleties with the culture that I just hadn't really worked in. And I was like this, I was like, I can do better with this. And so I went back and just added in like a couple, like just more notes to make it feel a little more authentic, like late 1500s Japan, instead of like England, which unfortunately is like fantasy default.
Mm-hmm.
So, things with like some of the clothing or the architecture, or just some of like the social interactions and stuff like that. And it brought it to a new level, because I feel like it really enriched it. And I was so glad that I took like an extra 2 months just to like put the final like world building sprinkles on it.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely worth it. That's awesome.